Hello and welcome back to my channel, Checks Captures Threats. Today's episode, in episode 48 of the Chess Guide, we'll be going over building a Kingside attack. So, what we've got here is 3 openings on how we have played like the English and the French and the Italian here. And what we've done is we've gone to the middle game just before maybe or just after the opening sort of time, and we're going to see here and how we've created a Kingside attack here of some sort, and we're going to go through how we've done it so we can build one ourselves with any opening. So in this first example here, it's going to be a lot to go through, so we're going to get straight into it. So here we have the English, and now it's the symmetrical English. I won't go all the way back here, but there is obviously remembering that there is this sort of stuff here, you know, with this pawn structure. We also have the knight and the bishop like this, and there's been a whole swap off. If you want to go all the way back here, there was a whole swap off we did like this. So then they play something like this, and what we're trying to show you here is how there's a few ways to judge which way you want to attack. Now you might say, oh, shall I attack kingside, shall I attack queenside? Now first step is look at your pawn structure. So when you have a pawn structure, now this is optional because there's some ways you can counter it as well. But most of the time here, if your pawns are in a chain like this, you want to attack the way that they are kind of going diagonally. So in this scenario, we would want to be attacking kingside because it is attacking, all these pawns are going this way. Now, if we're trying to attack the queenside here in a position like this, we might get, you know, this bishop can't get in, this knight's going to be quite packed going over this bishop's trapped, so there's many reasons that it will trap in the pieces, and it will, you know, cause a little bit more detour for our pieces, more positional play, which we might not want if we want a quick, fast attack. Now, again, reasons like this here as well, why we like a kingside attack here is the pieces. The main thing here is the pieces. So as we can see with this pawn structure here, we've actually got our bishop on the king side here, so it's now can face towards this way. We've also got a very strong bishop, obviously from the English, that we can play like this. We've also got our queen in the centre, which obviously can look both ways, but the queen is attacking more on the king side here. And also, look what we can attack. This is another thing. As you can see, right now we're not attacking anything on the queen side, whereas we're putting loads of pressure on that king side passively here, because we can take one move here and play knight to d5, and we're already threatening everything. You can't capture because it's checkmate. And, you know, if it's going to struggle to try and find any way to go, we can, you know, capture this. You know, we can push our queen now over here freely with the bishop. And just create an idea like this. Just if you have the kingside attack here, you know, and if they don't, see how they have no attack because their pawns are, you know, shambles here. But we're able to, you know, use this as a way to just gain, you know, tempo, you know, and have a plan. If you want to build a kingside, you know, attack, we're trying to attack this, you know, as quick as we can. Sometimes we want to try and take it slow and everything, but there is that. So hopefully, from this first example, we now know about the pawn structure. Now we're going to show you the next one, which is from the French, and I believe this is going to use the opposite kind of pawn structure, what we're going to be doing. And then also, understanding that we can also use our pieces to judge which way we want to go with the queenside or kingside attack. So if we go to the second example here on the French defense, now as we see, we've castled queenside with the French. It's a very, you know, different idea here as black. You know, you very rarely would do this. As you can see, there's no pawns really blocking this king. You'd have to move the king over this way because there is so many pieces here. But why would you say that this is a kingside attack? You know, you're not technically attacking that much. Now, there's a few reasons. So, obviously, as I've said here, if we did use the pawn structure rule, we really should be attacking the queen side. And technically, we are kind of already doing that in a way with this queen and everything. But, you know, some pieces will stay on the queen side. Don't get me wrong. When we want to build a kingside attack, it doesn't mean throw your every piece possible into their king. You want to leave stuff behind to defend the king, and you also want to have a bishop or a knight or even a rook to go on to the other side to maybe, you know, cause a bit of, you know, forcing their pieces to not protect their king and, you know, force them to the queen side. So there's that. But in this position, obviously, seeing that we've got this pawns like this, we are still able to, because we have these pawns over here now, all of these three, we're able to create a very, very attacking 3 pawns here. So very quickly, if we just played a few moves, just at random, not proper moves, but as we can see here, it doesn't take long, and now it's going to be a bit difficult, but it doesn't take that long to start creating attack. Even if you just want to push a pawn to try and do a rook lift, for example, or, there's all of this. You can use your pawns to try and stop their bishop here, for example. And obviously there could be stuff like this. But again, you're opening up this for this rook. This rook is now amazing. So, what we're trying to say here is how if you have this bishop like this as well, we're causing many attacks at this kingside, even with our pawns the wrong way here. So that if we, for somehow, are able to, get around this pawn structure here, we can use these pawns effectively. Now, there will be stuff like this pawn here in the way, there will be other stuff, but you can always try and find a way to go around it. That's how we need to plan stuff. Okay. So hopefully you understand that you can kind of use it, but most of the time you'd like to judge by the pawns here. As we see, we can struggle in some cases. And last but not least, we're on the Italian here, and again, we can see here we've got this pawn structure here, which means we want to attack the king side, so not the queen side this time. And at first they can always look a little bit difficult. See here, there's not really a certain attack we've got on the king side. Our pawns aren't really doing anything, our knight bishops aren't really doing anything other than maybe an attack like this, or right there, on the king at least, and this pin here. But it takes a very few moves, and we can cause some sort of ideas. Now again, we can play moves that, might stop everything. We might want to play a d5 move here. It might not be attacking the king side yet, but if we can get a piece onto this square here, then, that's very good for us. But we also have ideas in the fact that we can just castle. It doesn't matter if you're trying to attack the king side. Sometimes, if you don't use the pawns, and you just use your pieces, sometimes it's best to also castle the king side as well, because you're already using pieces on that side of the board. What's wrong with having all the pieces there that can retreat and protect the king at the same time? So there's that. And you also have other moves here in the fact that we can simplify everything. We can even do stuff like bringing our knights over here. We can push our pawns if we wanted to try something like this. By all means. It just means we castle queenside, which we could probably do in this scenario. But again, there's many other ways here we can find stuff, whether it's, trying to get even positional kingside attack. Sometimes they may not see what's going on. If you play a move like this, they might think, oh, you're trying to go here, but maybe you're trying to go to g3 and then trying to attack one of these squares looking at this. So there's many possibilities. So that will be the end of the video, but just to conclude what we would like in a kingside attack. So make sure about 60 to 70% of the time we'd like, our pawns to be facing that way. So again, if it's like this, we'd like to try and attack the king side. Sometimes you can attack the queen side. Very rarely it'd have to be like the opposite colour bishop. So obviously all of these are on black squares. So this bishop here would be very good, for example. But also, you'd like to use pieces and pawns, or really, you don't just use pawns on its own, because 3 pawns can do a lot, but if you're going against something like a knight even, you're already going to struggle. So try and include both pieces and pawns. If you don't use pawns and just pieces, that is fine, but there is that. And use any strategy to try and get a kingside attack. Don't, just go, move your rook up and then that's that. Try and play positional, try and play sacrifices maybe. You can always, if you see a move like, this, maybe you want to sacrifice, open up their king for our pawns to come through. Something like that, for example. So there's anything we can do here. So hopefully you now understand what we can do. Obviously, next episode in the chess guide, we will be going over building a queenside attack. So you'll see a load more openings like, we might try and see the London. We might try and get sort of the Queen's Gambit and all of that. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. So thank you and bye-bye.